Hello, there's an officer, Jerry Miller, for example, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on Facebook. He brought it up to, I don't know who he is. He said he had rules with a drone, and he said he was recorded me growing marijuana, which I wasn't growing. I swear to God. I swear to God on all existence. I swear, in other words, Allah. I swear to the identity of all space such as I don't pray in mosque. I don't believe that. I believe the beginning of the Quran says, for example, all you have to do is be honest, or you can use the name Allah for the hypersemic tendencies or not. It also qualifies that person. Don't pray in the mosque for the slightest reason if you sense it. You guys aren't given the power to reason, to the individual to think. Same thing with the Trinity. I believe in the Old Testament, and I believe in only that one part of it where it says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the science will come together. But no one even knows about that because they're trying to defend the book with delusions, criminally foreign influence, factual nature, quiet aspects, nature, out of sequence too. In other words, and then we'll have a debate about that, and becomes name calling. In other words, and then people use the words delusions while their delusions raw. That's why we have to force people onto paper. Connecticut into Brand. A whole bunch of different judges are personally and professionally involved with people that grew up near me and putting fake things in there with their teachers from other classrooms and then trying to make fake exceptions. That's recorded too. They're trying to pretend that would be other if they would follow mandated law. They have avert criminal enterprises, people I don't know names of who we could get their names. In other words, because they've been planting evidences from other locations because they already had to hide line progressions and they had to hide sequence shifts. They try to make people look like they're groups that way. In other words, in the sequence of when they knew each other. Increasingly, others communicated to each age of fact, treatment, nature. In other words, too. You guys, we still have delusions that are relative because at the campuses because they're putting fake things in the campuses and fake motivations for it. There were a whole bunch of other countries here and there shared, and they've been thinking and speaking, but they can't do it rightfully. They can't do it rightfully, on paper. So they have to do it with little and keep collusions. That's why everything's taking too long. That's why there's so many problems. And the police have jobs, only headaches, because in other words, they have collusions at each age and nature of fact sheeting of campus, which is from off them, how they stay victim predators, victim hyper predator. In other words, and you say that it's mob because then they pretend that you think that they're acting for the kids. They're putting their collusion /s between and at the campuses, inter-campuses and intra-campuses. NASA is involved also with the officer Jerry Miller. He said there's an officer, Jerry Kerr, is involved with him, planting that evidence on the north side of my house. Others have been. Many tied to Miss Riley, who was my algebra teacher, and Anthony Yagman. He had timed roles with the principal child abuser I caught them with. And first forcing it. He had roles forcing that with a Joshua Julian too, and a Joshua Stryker. A whole bunch of people tied with Joshua Julian and a Joshua Stryker with involved with predicate acts in my area from other areas. I never saw Joshua Stryker on my street in my life, or Joshua Julian, or near me. But people said that he's involved with the corner of their syntax with the corners of the street on Griswold Street. A whole bunch of people that tied to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, and Trinity College that have been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me and to them. In other words, the people that were there through time, and also their roles with the shipping locations, their natures of roles with different shipping, more than 3. In other words, and they don't even know me. I don't know them. But this is what comes up when the people, in other words, they've been switching names, forging names, making confessions, lying about their motivations. In other words, whole bunch of people tied to a Kevin Dillon and to the state the Weathersfield Community Center and the sides of it and the fire departments are involved here. Intercities with FBI director and courts before the World Trade Center attack in Connecticut had roles with the people at the World Trade Center attack leading up to a long term and since. Both sides and the difference of their guilt. That was also used remotely because there's a hyperforeign side here. It's the observable relativity to why and how you guys left out how we have black pupils and whites of eyes. And they were the same color eyes we have at the same time. In all exceptions, in other words, you guys and the breaching methods roles assigning other to be communicated for that, otherwise that body to be sensed, including if it was a majority of people, including it's everyone. We're against those laws, against every single person those laws were, because there was a breaching method involved. And it was northern colonies, southern colonies, distinctly, even though they were fighting with each other and stuff, they had roles with this system that has been bridged since semi-ancient times. That's the principle that you take from history. The databases and their identity of relativity to us were bridged. The sciences, the names of the people, the sciences from off those campuses, they've only known. In other words, it makes sense for the breaching method too. That is all use/S, or all location/S, the way nobody wanted, even then, but they were the higher live progressions. There are proofs, more probable in semi-ancient times. A hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise began as a transnational criminal enterprise that was juxtaposed, in other words, and they knew that it was, government acting as criminal enterprises and with them. In other words, and they knew they were going to get caught for that. So they realized the only way they could do, because they knew that, understood how nature would continually demonstrate whatever they did to get out of it, too. So because they understand how nature works, and we could observe this, as I've talked about in my live streams, my live stream YouTube section of my video. If you touch the person's name on YouTube, you can go to their channel. You can see their live section and their video section, not just the home section. And you can see the YouTube shorts they make. Excuse me, and the playlists. I don't know how else it looks like from the viewer's perspective, and I believe it is distinct on desktop and or phones, etc. In other words, black pupils. I forgot the title of this video though. But in other words, America has roles with Russians in Ukraine and people on all sides of campuses. They have roles that are actually recorded. What is actually recorded? Where there is and has been conscious remote use /S of the differences of the interbranch names, like as in other words, difference as a woman, a girl associated with them and their family members, as a pigment of skin, as any difference, as a culture of any form. All culture /S are in demonstration of the semi-nature relationship we have to that which invented two eyes, not just for our species. In other words, we have quality aspects in nature distinct from the other species, non-distinct from them too, though, and simultaneously with them, but also per that which is further hyper-simultaneous per science, even if we don't have to agree to call it hyper-simultaneous. But we need to agree to have a name for it as that hyper-simultaneous, because it is increasingly other values at the same time that we could observe. This is more probably what pantheism was about. There are proofs that the Old Testament and that the Quran were written to help all of humanity counter and do damage control, but also to overcome someday when we figure out to decipher it about this damage control, about, in other words, about how the science is, about how they changed the communications about the sciences, like the languages. The identity of the hyper invisible is that which is the reason why we are appreciating all the parts of speech about the invisible but still discernible. But why and how we need 5 names for the verb. 5 or 6, in other words, how it's with those names when we observe how we're appreciating it, why we're appreciating it. For example, the participle nature. There's a present participle and there's a past participle. So like they're grouped. The verb, we know that when they name the verb. And then there's a gerund, and there's a in other words, just like in other words, nature has those 3 parts of time: past that we know, active now to an extent we know, and to an extent of the future, like the seasons, we know of its value, its identity here, its identity in relationship to itself, the value of that, the extent of that which which is true always, as true per its system /s, and rolls with questions. Because this system shows us the importance and it being positive. The ancients would like it when they would catch criminal foreign being criminal foreign influence if it was themselves too. They didn't want to be, because that's how evolution's fruits, gifts came. But they wanted to be united with every country and simultaneously independent from them, and simultaneously checking independent / in other words, unified / independent too, because it's just like the identity of hyper simultaneous, just like it has relativity to and gains the value of the difference between, how it stays bigger than right to left or bigger than east to west, and it stays bigger than Earth has an especial concentrated identity of relativity to the identity of hyper simultaneous, to the identity of nature, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, which has a special difference manifest. But as a system that countries A through Z were only allowed to begin in tactical ulterior from. And it was a method that was so crazy, it knew people would rise against it, because our own nature does. For other reasons, it knew. But in other words, so it would do it in phases. And that's why I had crazy laws before America's founders were even born. I learned that in the notes at Central Connecticut State University. If someone was found out to have heard of people speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversation, they would do bad things to those people and everyone around them, or kill them, just for not telling on someone for speaking about building houses before America's founders were even born. In other words, there are still houses standing, and we haven't. And in other words, we could do way better. How are you? I don't take medication. So, in other words, I forgot what the title of this was. Oh, the Nassau. There's a Peruta family who has roles with someone named with a Bayer, who's one of the lawyers of Wethersfield Police, associated also with the FBI and other countries. These are Peruta families is Russian. I don't know them. They tried to make fake exceptions. They were brought up by confessions by kids when I was a kid. And there was a Tom Peruta they put in my class. I never had a conversation with him inside the class verbally. One time I was walking by the door. The only time I was even walking near the door by him, in the parking lot, like when you come into recess, you come to the door of your classroom, and so he had a little tennis ball on a string and hit it on the thing. In other words, he had something to do with their roles with the Russians in the Nassau. And in other words, I don't want to bring the kid's name up, but his neighbors, there's people with the name Kerr who have neighbors. I don't know their name, and they have roles with the school. One of them was a teacher on his street, and they have roles through time. In other words, attaching kids to fake conversations and ties to others and telling their families that too. That's what WFSB has been doing with them too. They have roles all along Route 3 through time, which is and the conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. And something to do with all sides, with Hangdog Lane, where it runs into, Two Rod Highway, and conversely, and they touch the Route 3 and the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. In other words, in ways relative, because all throughout that and at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, there are 3 spots where there are people tied to a Spada family and to a Mark Violet and to others with various probate court judges, family members, with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic military, people from Yukon, and people with the World Trade Center attack that have been involved planting evidences there and on and off Trinity College with my neighbors. One with the name, one with the role using of the name Lewis, the Cleesa, when they switched it to the name Lewis. And there's a Robert Rodriguez involved also with Darth Vader they says he's Darth Vader on the phone at Trinity College. I believe that was one of the ones at the off campus. See, when they switched it to the off campus, all sides have not been following. All sides have not been following. The breaching method has been using all sides remotely, criminally foreign influenced. Increasingly, since I was a kid, people from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, have been involved with planting. Kids from other classrooms are putting fake things. They're like doing little tricks to make it, and pretending passions and emotions and telling on people to make it look like they had communications with people before that. Increasingly, people tied to mayors have roles with the World Trade Center attack, and with Saudis personally and professionally tied to them, criminally foreign influence. They forced the Saudis to roles, and the Saudis attackers, we know they forced roles, but that difference was also used, and people associated with these medications narratives, and the doctors. The doctors, there are a whole bunch of doctors at Hartford Hospital who are officer of police forms and roles with foreign and domestic military, and people that work with probate courts. Probate courts have roles with drug crimes on elderly homes where they have the people locked in, and there's a torture method they don't know how to speak about. And it's in other words, they have to deny it. Or otherwise it will be worse. In other words, because there's a quality of fact treatment nature that is forced, collusion, or that body is sensed, including if there's a majority of people, including if it is everyone. And that breaching method showed people how to exploit, everything with itself left out. Not one identity of sophistication. That country's A through Z. That's why we have the suburbs that were designed before America's founders were born. We have people saying if they take their meds, when I'm bringing up the World Trade Center attack. There are World Trade Center attack predicate acts. In this Officer Jerry Miller brought up the word drone. And he said he filled me with a drone. And his syntax. Because these are people also with co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their family members and their neighbors. intercities who all along Route 175 have roles planting evidences with that, and from the founding locations. The also with the news has been planting evidences. The Air Force also has a Paul Kelly and his neighbors recorded having had roles with the World Trade Center attack and predicate acts, and the family members of this Delafair family. He said the father says it's he has a probate judge and his family. I didn't know who he was. And he's one of the ones tied to now probate court judges are also ones at the Hartford Hospital who have been speaking fake things into records, and they've been roles with Whiting Forensics, digital crimes at all locations /S. Whole bunch of people tied to a Judge Killian and to a Judge Smith involved with programs with them and people seating juries, people with a Dr. Zeman, all collusions with a Leahy family, forging names of other doctors too, roles, like a Dr. Shamsi Ali, fake conversations with me. Then he did wire crimes and rape threats on Facebook, and with the courts involved, and with the courts involved with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and New Britain courts. They have roles influencing students at Central Connecticut State University to pretend others were on campus with speech on and or off campus. That never taught. They put fake things recorded on campuses and places were recorded 24/7 as collusions, increasingly with people on my street who have wire crimes and increasing roles with increasing falsified police reports since I was a kid, intercities. A whole bunch of police departments are tied to Ray Collo and Tim O'Brien and their roles with the intelligence community. And people record, they say, I don't know if maybe they were up where that was said. They said that they would have roles with lobbyists, but they have roles with the spots and names next to the state capitol, and they have roles with 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike with the names at the next to the campus is also tied to this Institute of Living, involved with men and women who jump into people's and with badges who jump into and with gavels too. They should fear God, jump into people's conversation with talking about medications while their delusions raw. They're forbidding writing because they have little rat traps where they fabricate audio and video. Also with WFSB at the same time, Fox Connecticut News, intercities. They've been planting evidences at all natures of crime scenes, predicate acts with facts, including there's a Sandy Hook has a prison at there, and they have roles with Newtown, Connecticut. And that's where Adam Lanza was. People that were involved with abuses of Adam Lanza clearer than day, as from Hartford, Connecticut, as the ones involved, the businesses and names next to him, houses next to him, like a Jonathan Maiano has recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirm he has family members and roles with the spots and names next to Hartford Hospital, also with the Morals Market that used to be there, and where it is now, and Iola's Kitchen. I don't know if it's still there, next to there too, on the other side, next to Buckley, down the street from the Demorals Market, right next, down, around the corner from Hartford Hospital, and right next to it. In other words, there's also a dean involved. A dean, I don't know his last name, but no, I'm saying because that's what they've been doing with foreign and domestic doctors. Also with WFSB, they have a relationship through time with judges and prosecutors. There's a Brian Silver who's involved with New Britain Superior Court, I believe, as a prosecutor. Also with Connecticut's District Court involved with him, and their roles with the Facebook page and the social media. They have remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano, but I don't know if he could tell. In other words, because it says before he was off of Fox Connecticut News, I can't get them to respond. The police are using and have used wire crime acts and methods, faking and changing what's actually recorded with digital evidences, and they pretended through the news that I spoke with them as a kid at the police station. That never was. The kids who did speak with them, they put fake tie. I didn't even barely know them, and they tried to pretend other. They had them bring up things. They have roles with whole bunch of people tied to Chris Walters and neighbors of his with the name Lombardo involved with the intelligence community at Hartford Hospital and their roles with unmarked police forms and with the elements of that, where they're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences with people all along Route Church Street in Old Weathersfield too. We have roles of wire crime, mail crimes with the people at Hartford Hospital. In other words, also attach me to fake conversations with them through the mail. In other words, I've been asking Judge Napolitano to get them on paper, one name in sequence. Also, Trantolo and Trantolo, I barely had words with them at all. In other words, they have roles with the news locations. There is the syntax of in other words, they have roles with forcing more too, because there are intelligence families that have been associated with the neighbors and with the persons themselves as the family members of more leaders of the kids. And so, these are the people avoiding me so they could keep them, because the pretending it's personal. If I bring up their names, I'm trying not to bring up their names too. But I'm gonna have to. And I'm trying to tell you guys. I'm trying to warn you guys. The other people try to warn people to be gentlemanly. In other words, because these are people that hurt people by which say at locations when people speak at other locations, leaving out, making up facts and motivations for it. All sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts themselves, including in the Ninth Circuit Court, they sequence shift, including with the people involved with this Cololo name, who said that the Scaloras are their cousin. The Scaloras are one of the ones at spots next to the World Trade Center, involved with names at the World Trade Center next to it and the court next to it too, Ninth Circuit Court, involved with the court itself with a sequence shift and both sides of that case, names on both sides of that case and their sources are ones involved with predicate acts intercities and interstates against me. And they don't know it themselves because they attach me to fake conversations with everyone around me since I was a kid and with themselves. They've been using investigators remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. These people don't care about the others of the military, or you wouldn't put people in fake conversations with it and be leaking this way. I don't even know the names of the people that know my name with the military tied to Mark Violet. And what's that guy that was bringing up? What's that place he brought up at the Big Y? That guy was that a machining place? Get off me. Get on paper, one name in sequence with the people with the violence, with the news, please. Fix the fake news, the fake conversations with me, WFSB. You have no excuse for it. Why are you hiding? What are you doing? Get on paper, one name in sequence, those three branches of government and the people associated with this Mazzucato bakery, with the police chief Cintron, with the officers making confessions, and with the Jonathan Mariano's confessions about his wife, this Reno Mazzucato's wife. And I never had a class with Reno Mazzucato, never saw him around my schools. They tried to make a fake exception real quick one time. He has roles with people all along Route 175, with Whiting Forensics too, increasingly involved with them, with the state police, people with Sound View too, involved with Trinity College, intelligence community, increasingly confessions tied to Ray Cololo. And my other neighbor non-verbally converted to me at Trinity College. In other words, it was demonstrated to me. Roles too, and a Joshua Stryker. The day after, he makes nonverbal confirmations of his roles, lying about me and lying about himself behind my back since I was a kid. I never had a class with him. I only saw him one time on a campus at Trinity College ever, and one time on a Weathersfield campus. That's it. In other words, and it was at Eric Oliveri's time one time, and I skewed what was true there to get them to speak, because that's how you can't record the police, but you can make them record themselves. They have roles. I don't know if they are police or what. They have roles with some foreign and domestic military at the Oliveri house on Elm Street in Weathersfield, and the one in Rocky Hill, with these police that are refusing to identify themselves. And they have wire crimes in Weathersfield police pizza there too, with a Steven Stocco and a Maria Pizzino involved intercities with the campuses, names on off them with child defenders, leaders of the kids, first forced, and then further, and then there's the years apart that have connections to each other because it was time use/s of it. They said it has something to do. Maria Pizzino sought me out to record confessed. I never saw her on the Wethersfield campus in my life, Maria Pizzino. And Steven Stocco, when he was in class with me, I never had one word of him. Never partook in the bullying of him that was constant by Paul Zano and Ray Colo. And I recorded. They put them in it. There are recorded means to observe what is actually recorded. They consciously put him to harass the Steven Stocco so they could pretend. I didn't. That's why I didn't take part of that. I mean, that's not why, because I didn't care about that. But these are people who have been putting predicate acts with their teachers, with the intelligence community. Increasingly, people named Cololo and Smith have roles with Afghan leaders and kids, and people that I don't know the names of, involved with the Wethersfield Police Department, where it is now and where it used to be. At the Wethersfield town offices is increasingly involved with people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, all kinds of natures tied to the federal evidences crimes and these court switching and forging names. And they're changing with digital evidences. Increasingly, Whiting Forensics has people tied to Joshua Julian and recorded involved with them with predicate acts with child defenders, leaders of kids, and people tied to body dumping spots, including a serial killer. In other words, as time collusions with them with other natures of predicate acts with the same house/s, that time collusions with that. And with these people with the name O'Brien. Various police departments involved with this O'Brien and Colo and where they go and Glastonbury, Newington, Wethersfield, Pier God, New Britain. New Britain's sick. All these cities are sick. These were beautiful places. Now they're sick because everything became 2-family houses, 3-family houses, and everyone left out how the breaching method designed them and forced the cities to be like that. They're asking you, in other words, anyone who wants to pretend that they can't discern the breaching method, a torture, extortion, slavery method, many ways is more so behind the suburbs, let alone the cities, than anyone that built them. All they can do is damage control, safety, and how safe. How safe is it when you have to walk? You're in a raft trap that can't defend itself, fact-cheating nature-wise, from other locations tied to it. Not by accident either, because there is worse involved. Forgiveness is not to leave out the breaching method. It's recorded clear as day. That's what many pray. That's why we don't leave out. However, how are you, Dean? No, there was a Judge Smith years ago who has roles with people involved with the criminal enterprises and sequence ships and putting fake things in databases, including with foreign and domestic medical families, and their roles with corners of the streets. Has something to do with their roles with the corners on Church Street in Old Wethersfield and the corner on Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive. It's also with Senator Lieberman, his roles with the offices there, and Ray Hernandez, who was a nice guy. In other words, people aren't going to go into the details. In other words, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in Hartford courts. And various people had ties to people from boxing gyms and their roles with the different communities. And then per their own syntax, including where they speak for the law, but they're speaking about culture. They can't speak for the culture of the Constitution unabridged. Then they have to pretend to perceive prejudice. See, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with a Sammy Vega, knowingly or not. And with people with the Department of Children and Families, who have roles with the boxing gyms before the World Trade Center attack, who have been seeding roles where they seed people like that will say, "Oh, let courts solve things or let police solve things," dishonestly to themselves or others, which is their right, but it's not where where they, where the courts won't identify themselves legitimately and the police won't. So they have the Parks and Recreation too, increasingly through time. And they have roles with intelligence police forms. They defend themselves. They see the phenomenon of these groups, these criminal enterprises, and people that are like gangs and stuff like that. That's because they make those kids need protection. They make those adults need protection with those people stacking in New York City. For example, this breaching method showed the legal identities in countries A through Z, how to blame other things, others, ourselves for what it caused and keeps, which is, in other words, anyone to believe it's acceptable to pretend that we can't understand. Would you say about Saudi Arabia? Dean, why do you say, yep, in probate court from Central Connecticut State University to Saudi Arabia? There's a Whiting forensics involved with a whole bunch of people tied to and as a Joshua Julian, and there's a people with the name O'Neill who have roles with Saudi Arabia and intercities. And Eric Burgess is one of my sources. Dean Keyes has roles with foreign and domestic military, and people involved with the prisons also as my sources. These are, in other words, I'm not even a journalist. I have journalists also recorded fabricating things. In other words, using the right to lie and using truths for lies, two roles, which is also demonstrably possible and has been. See, they're having everyone use Boolean logic, leaving out exception nature as nature shows us to use it and appreciate it. I never said that about Central Connecticut State University. I said Ray Cololo, the house at 80 Carroll Drive, and others tied to him, like a Joshua Julian. They have roles with Whiting Forensics and Central Connecticut State University, and people on the sides of Central Connecticut State University, like a Mark Violet and a Mike Violet, and his neighbors with this Joshua Julian. And they had roles timed with a principal child offender and a Bob Chase, who confessed and recorded a Phil Cololo, is involved with them. So these are people involved also with him that I don't know their names, who are also intercultural themed and intracultural, identity, theft, fraud, slanders. These are people with the intelligence communities, intercities, like even the leasing agents associated with places associated with Phil Cololo. Phil Cololo has been planting evidence of identity theft, fraud, slanders. In other words, since I was a kid behind my back, I never saw him on my street. Man, he was swerving his bike. They were trying to make a fake exception, and worse. In other words, on my street, I still have. These are people involved with Whiting Forensics and Central Connecticut State University, with the FBI director and Hartford courts and New Britain courts and Connecticut's district court. They have family members and people associated with them that were planting evidences on off that campus, and they requested help to me because they were influencing people to plant evidences there through time. Also, when I was a kid, it has something to do with Joe DeMoro or Ray Cololo and others have their roles with this Wethersfield Community Center and the spots next to it tied to their roles, and Wethersfield tied to their roles with West Hartford locations, with the Wethersfield police chiefs retired, and the New Britain locations associated with all sides of the Central Connecticut State University, with the names involved with them with sequence shifts, and the officers switching and forging names and falsifying police reports, including for the same arrests. And in other words, so they need to identify themselves. I've been asking Judge Napolitano for help. He needs to get them on paper, one name and sequence. No one has all these years. I've been asking you guys for a long time, calmly. Some of them people want to have, in other words, when people want to debate people, they bring out their delusions, their criminally portable inspection page, and more people get attached to fake conversations with me. That's why there's a path of more more evidence is. They can't even defend what they're trying to pretend in the background, the intelligence, right through administrations too, where they pretend they pretend there's a difference with a Republican or Democrat because they came through campuses that had other communicated for our founders in self-valued roles, using what they said to pull it off, leaving out what they declassified about it, and they're leaving out the delusions that they're maintaining there, including the people that work with the are supposed to be experts on such. They're criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Just a couple handfuls of them have more roles with more federal evidences, crimes, and predicate acts and methods of them than there are streets in Hartford, Connecticut. That's why there's so many shootings. The intelligence community lives there next to it. Fear God. Find this ILO's kitchen and tomorrow's market. People of Hartford, get the WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, and WTH to fix the fake conversations with me, WFSB said. And now I want a response for the principal child defenders campus confessions and the rest of them involved. And they're pretending other too. They've been planting evidences with the news and parents and their kids, putting fake motivations, pretending they don't realize they're criminally foreign influence. Like next to Paul Kelly is a family. I don't even know their names. I forgot their names. I know their names because it was repeated to me, just like mine was repeated to theirs. They have roles with some probate court judges associated with this. With some of them are named Spada and Demoro, and not Demoro, Spada and I don't know about that, but Spada and Della. They've been planting evidences and fake nature ties to me. There have been all kinds of scams with the intelligence community through time. All kinds of natures of investigators have been collusions with judges and prosecutors. In other words, at the locations from their own, and with the campuses, because all that was all location /S everywhere the human species body was. We know that we use remotely. We're honest about what the value of those laws were set up against everyone, northern colonies, southern colonies, and with overtly against everyone black and white. In other words, black pupils. They cannot see the whites of eyes. They want to speak about nuclear weapons and things like that. They want to speak about logistics. I beg Judge Napolitano has a YouTube channel called Judging Freedom on YouTube. And he has people from throughout the world who are also involved. There's a Dr. Shub of modern languages who's involved with people from these other countries. And with probate court, his wife works for a probate court. Is one of the courts involved with, in other words, what is recorded on and off elderly homes and veterans' homes, involved with also on off hospitals and on off all branches of government and the intelligence tied to them, including wedding forensics. They had time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in the same house /S, and people tied to them increasingly involved with connected home break-ins through the year and timed use /S of it. I also noted recorded. In other words, the same ones involved with the World Trade Center attack with all sides. So also, there was someone that was looking through a mirror. He has a YouTube channel, Judge Napolitano. Since before he was left Fox News, every year since the World Trade Center attack, Connecticut has been using predicate acts to hide their roles with that. And one of the things they've been doing to get away with it is attaching me and everyone else, other people, to fake communications and changed communications with everyone around us, and then pretending that's evidences. And so increasingly, no one will help me. No one will give me a goddamn name who disbelieves anything I said, and we'll take it from there. Anything I said, let's take it from there. So that's inseparable because too, I've recorded proofs that there's corruption with all sides, with all these wars, and with all A through Z. They're fake identities. In other words, they're people that put in fake in conversations, change conversation with people. Increasingly, there's a Dan Bonapane. They influence him to make fake ties to me with a whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold has roles with all sides of parks and people at the campuses, including medical and fire. Involved also with Whiting forensics people, increasingly involved with them. Also with names on my street, and involved also with news planting predicate acts at the same time with various natures of federal criminals and murders involved. And they bring these, they play these games with little kids. In other words, they're doing it between the campuses to make it look like people. Increasingly, there are more leaders of the kids who recorded themselves further involved with it. And if they don't really want forgiveness, in other words, or they want forgiveness described the way the breaching method needs them to describe it. In other words, they're obligated to get on paper. I want a response for the principal child offenders campuses, confessions, and why and how they prevented me a calm voice. I barely had words with them. And then they did that to pretend and they kept making confessions and saying fake things. And then they did that. They kept making phone calls. The guy kept making confessions and phone messages and saying those things too. So I will call him back and say more fake things. Then they arrested me for harassment, and they hid what was actually recorded. And they have more with the name Scalora involved with that too, and a Robert Rodriguez and neighbors of his through time involved with judges and prosecutors and foreign and domestic countries with logistic with drugs and medicines crimes. So there are military involved with their difference and police forms. They're going to defend their difference. The families with the judicial branch, they're going to defend their difference. Do it all here online. Because in other words, they're all narratives, all fake in the background. People pretending passions and emotions. They have roles worse than anything they ever put. Most of the people that ever put in jail, they have roles doing worse. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Narrative. Judge Napolitano, please. New Britain Superior Court, Hartford Courts. They recorded confess. I never had a conversation with him on Central Connecticut State University, but I know it's tied to it. He said his name was Officer Hunter, but it was weird because they're switching names roles with the people with the New Britain Superior Court, and there are proofs that he might have because he didn't sign the police report right, and the way that they had the judge set it up with the girl. This is after the World Trade Center attack too. There are judges involved with houses and businesses and the school at the corner of New Park Avenue and Park Street and Hartford. And there's a Daryl Sullivan with Alina's Pizza there and a Tiki Cafe or whatever, involved with people with more child offenders and leaders of the kids. There were people in my sixth grade class. There's a sixth grade who's now, I believe, a teacher at the school at the time with the principal child offender. And she has roles with people with the state corrections offices and people with the name Cololo and what's his name? That person, Lance Cuddy and a Daryl Sullivan, have roles with switching names with a Magdalena, and that's how they tricked me to go there by switching names, pretending she was the roommate who had that name too, next to Trenton Central Connecticut State University. They have roles with the lawyer of the FBI, with spots next to them, like not far away from there too. In other words, Robert Luskin. Robert Chevrolet is his lawyer's name, and his co-defendant's lawyer. They have roles with names that work with the Connecticut District Court too. as the ones in both sides of cases involved with predicate acts intercities. All kinds of organized crime with the people and delusions with the people, including with the military. A whole bunch of military tied to a Demoro family and Aiello family with those spots next to Harper Hospital again, as rolls also with Cuban people that with the torture and the campus's corruption. That's why there's gangs. There's gangs because you guys don't have real science on New York City, for example, sickly distinctly from how you don't have it on Weathersfield and Hartford. And there was reports of some Mancuso. I don't even know who the Mancusos are. That name was brought up in confessions tied to a Jody Pierce and her roles with a Paul some Apted family involved with the intelligence community at Hartford Hospital, and their roles were intercities with the police departments involved with the same house/S near me, involved with Fred Gruzet, even though I never saw them with him, and their wire crimes with them, and they have predicate acts with facts between campuses, and they're putting kids from private schools come onto public school campuses to further life progression cover-ups, etc. Increasingly, people tied to Chris Walters. I only know of Chris Walters seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles of people from off campuses who plant predicate acts with facts on and off campuses, and roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with people involved with World Trade Center predicate acts and the differences of their country's guilt or ours. In other words, that's also used because there's more names involved. So they faked conversations with me, pretended I had conversations with the police as a kid and then as an adult. There are two Mendez police involved with that, with wire crimes, mail crimes, their roles with the Weathersfield Police Department and the spots next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with the social media, also of Whiting Forensics and the school campuses of the kids, involved with also medical and sexual offenders, with overt criminal enterprises, per the sources of the Mendezes, who have been fabricating fake ties, fake natures of ties to me since I was a kid, also with names at the state judicial branch offices, per themselves. People that influenced people named Potter to make up things about me. In other words, a Mr. Potter and his students. What is the story of the Tower of Babel? Dean, who's Harrison Briggs too? I don't know who Harrison Briggs is. They pretended in the conversations they pretended with me. They pretended that people communicate through the television. A Leahy family is one of the ones involved with that. They forged the names of a Dr. Shamsi Ali. A whole bunch of people at the Weathersfield Community Center have roles with Hartford Hospital and names I don't know the names of, with the Parks and Recreation also involved with Ray Colo, Joe DeMore, and a Detective Dylan and their families' roles with, identity theft, fraud, falsified police reports with a whole bunch of different police departments. In other words, they got caught in lie progressions. In other words, and I recorded how and why they cannot describe behavior properly, calm behavior or aggressive. That's why they faked it into fake behavior into records too. Dean Selma, Weathersfield Police. So the Weathersfield Police are confessing and demonstrating. They have roles with spots next to where the Mazzucato Bakery is at, and they have roles with the Mazzucato Bakery family as their own on Ridge Road through time, and along Route 175 which is one of the conjunctions to it, is something to do with their roles playing. Identity theft frauds. We have We have the police forms involved with this. All these police departments have connections with each other, and they've been putting fake things in databases, fake ties to people at the same time with other countries. They have a whole bunch of different countries in the news involved. And then if you speak it, it makes it hurts their feelings too. And that's what keeps them there and there here. The ones we have shared here and there. They're shared here and there tactical terror than they need to be. They need to be retrained. That's what one of the things what is going to take place. Heaven is here. In other words, we have the suburbs that were designed tactically to nature before America's founders were born, and there were no cars, trains, cranes. In other words, we have means now for better than free to do way better architecture and the ground's identity relationship to itself. In the water, we're tricks heard first persuaded through campuses of bridge that countries A through Z and the differences of them A through Z campuses. So they tricked everyone to put the water underground. The rest of the water is all polluted with PFAS, chemicals. I don't even know how, forever chemicals, etc. In other words, and even the ocean has, in other words, how many years are we going to go polluting the ocean? It's not going to affect anything. They say there's mercury in all the fish. In other words, they have all the locations criminally foreign influence rolls with distinct natures of organized crime through methods of predicate acts with facts that use just everyone speaking through other while incapable of defending that and affording to be, let alone to protract, short words with convictions proper, like regarding the revelations that come with those about how the short word, how we have black people's whites of eyes, and that and the breaching method was left out. See the logic behind this and the reason behind it and the nature behind it. The identities already spoke for the law. That law, they already had collusion /S with predicate acts with facts. And that's only capable of being until we force forgiveness for the people who are, and things like that, to pay attention only to the predicate acts, not leaving, in other words, when people speak about predicate acts. But we have people tactically, pseudo-educated. In other words. Then they have to pretend others. So there's a mass styles that agree to pretend that it's because success means what it doesn't. And there are other people who are attacking success, who are also doing it as if the whole array is needed by the breaching method to hide behind. You don't speak about success until you have black people's whites of eyes seen. I'll see the whites of eyes. Don't shoot. The whole world would love us if we understood our founders' cause, because it is theirs. We are unabridged. If there's corruption, people make conspiracy theories. The people who speak for Judge Napolitano, then they want to debate. Well, that's because they're doing good because they're counters to really sick. That's true. In other words, of our own side. But we don't have a side at A through Z. That's true too. That's why the suburbs look in America just like they do in Russia and Ukraine. And again, since before America's founders were born, that was forced. Anyone's even heard, not telling on someone who was speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations, that person was sensed through their own, through our own, as the human species body, A through Z. Now systems tactical terror from that hypernative one, the hyper simultaneous one. It is more values than just that. Anthony, but thank you, Dean. I appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. Have a great night. I'm ending this too down here. Thank you.